We look at some of Miami's key players and how we expect them to perform to close out the regular season, plus the latest on Kevin Durant's offseason, and Dwyane Wade opens up about his departure from the Heat in 2016. Stay tuned for a great episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Have a great show for you today. We'll get to Dwyane Wade and Kevin Durant in a minute. But first, today's the day. The Locked On Heat watch party tonight. The Taurus, Coconut Grove for the Heat's game against the Pacers. Tip-off is at 8 p.m. Come watch the game with us. Hang out. Take advantage of an extended happy hour. Signature cocktails. Great food. We already talked about how great the burger is. The French fries are also really good, David. Yep. Hopefully watch a Heat win.
Yes. It's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to it. We had so much fun last time. You're going to watch the game anyway. It's Friday night. Good opportunity to go out to the Grove and talk with us and hang out. Absolutely.
Beautiful Grove. And look at the weather outside of Miami. I'm looking outside my window right now. Beautiful blue skies. Come on. It's a Friday night. Let's go out.
We're lining up. It's perfect.
It's cheaper than a ticket to the game.
No, that's for sure.
Before we get to the news here, we're going to play Stock Watch. So a little bit different. We're going to frame it as this. Buy, sell, or hold based on whether you think that these Heat players will be better than they have been over this last quarter of the season, if they're basically going to stay the same as they've been all season, or if you think maybe they've already played their best basketball this season and they're probably going to get worse. I got a handful of players here. We'll start with the All-Star, Tyler Hero. Buy, sell, or hold. This one I think is a pretty tough one.
This is a tough one. I'm going to hold on Tyler. Because I think we're going to see a good mix of games where he's going to struggle because they're going to be keying in on him the way that we've seen over the last few weeks where opposing defenses recognize he is the straw that stirs Miami's offense. And if you can limit what he does, then that makes things easier to shut down everywhere else. But at the same time, I also believe that he has diversified his game to the point where he's good enough to continue to make an impact. It just won't be as consistently as it was during the first half of the season.
Yeah, we've seen when the three-point shot isn't falling, he'll get to the basket. He'll get to the free throw line. Right. He's had games of 5, 6, 7, 8, 11 assists. Like he can kind of start dishing and doing that kind of stuff too. He'll struggle with length, right? Like the Boston Celtics is still a tough matchup for him. Guys that could put big bodies on him and trap him up high on the floor. But a lot of teams don't have those guys. Right, and on those nights, Tyler Hero is pretty good. I go holds also, and holds basic. And by the way, hold is all-star. Right, he's an all-star this year. He's averaging 24 points per game. I think he'll just play at an all-star level for the rest of the season. Bam Adebayo.
That's a buy. I think
I'm with
we've
you.
seen his. I think he's shown the improvement. The jumper's falling. The confidence is there. I think you're still going to have some off nights because it's Bam, and that's who he is, and it's in the NBA, and anybody can have
offensive
an off
nights.
Night. Yes, very good point. Because you're still going to get the high level of effort. You're going to get the defense, the hustle stats, which we pointed out recently this week. They're still there at a high level. It's just whether or not you're going to get 20 to 25 points from him on any given night. That might be a little bit too much to ask for or expect, but you'll get them more regularly than you did to start the season. If for no other reason than because he struggled mightily to find his role early on. And we've seen him continue to develop and grow over the course of this season. So, yeah, that's a definite buy.
Buying. Buy all this stock. Just buy it up. Keep buying it. This might be the lowest the Bam Adebayo stock ever got, right? Like I can't imagine it gets lower than what it was the first 2 months of the season. Should have bought it back then. You and I were buying it back then. I don't know that there's any stock left to go. We're like part owners in the Bam Adebayo stock market now. We know that his numbers have been down this year, but over the last 10 games, 21.5 points on 55% shooting. 10 rebounds a game, 3 assists. Those are all-star numbers. Those are great numbers.
Absolutely.
So he's back.
Absolutely.
And a big part of it has been moving to power forward with Khalil Ware there. Probably the most important coaching decision Eric Spoelstra has made all year because it's just made your all-star player, your 3-time all-star in Bam, play like an
Unlock
all-star
him.
again. Andrew Wiggins,
Hmm.
based on his Heat tenure, obviously.
He's been great. I mean, pointed
Yeah.
out recently, he's been averaging over 20 points over the last handful of games. He didn't reach that mark in the most recent win over Atlanta, but he's still capable of it. He's getting to the line. The three-point shot is there. I'm buying on Andrew Wiggins. I think he's going to
Ooh.
have a big stretch there. I really do. I think as he gets more comfortable and as this team and Eric Spoelstra continue to empower him, and even as we just talked about, as Tyler continues to draw defenses and get the attention of defenders, that opens up opportunities for Wiggins, especially if Bam is also playing at a high level. So I think the combination of Bam and Wiggins is probably going to be leading Miami statistically over the next 20-something games. But it's going to be kind of a trade-off between them and then Tyler occasionally stepping up as well. So I'm buying all the stock on Andrew Wiggins.
So I've still got Wiggins stock left over from 2019 when the Warriors traded for him, and I was covering the Warriors, and I was like, oh, I like this addition. D'Angelo Russell out, Andrew Wiggins in. So that stock, he helps win the championship for them in 2022 when he was probably the second best player on the floor. I've made a lot of money on Andrew Wiggins stock in my career. So thank you, Andrew Wiggins. I am sprinkling a little bit more, though. I'm sprinkling a little bit more in. I want more Wiggins stock now that he's in Miami. I think I'm going to buy. He's averaging 30. He's shooting 37% overall so far with the Heat. Now that mark has been better over these last couple of games. It's mostly just off of a couple very small. We're talking about 6 games, so small sample size. So
Sure.
A couple of really good games that'll boost that percentage right up. For the season, he's at 44% shooting, which is better. Right around his career average, slightly lower. So I'm buying that those averages go up a little bit more. Here's the thing I love about Wiggins. He's averaging 1.7 offensive rebounds per game in those 6 games in a Heat uniform. That would be a career high. And that to me is when Wiggins is really unlocked, when he's a factor on the offensive glass. I just remember my biggest memory other than Steph Curry just shooting the lights out against the Celtics in the 2022 finals was Wiggins grabbing offensive rebounds and those swing plays that just demoralized that Celtics team. And Wiggins has that ability, and we've seen it a couple times with the Heat already. And he averaged 2 offensive rebounds per game during that final series. He's at 1.7 right now with the offensive rebounds for the Heat. I want to keep seeing that. That's what I'm looking at with Wiggins. That's the biggest kind of swing stat with him for me. Davion Mitchell.
Ooh, also a very tough one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to hold.
Same.
I'm going to hold. I'm not ready to say that like the 5 3-point outing that we saw from him is going to be a consistent part of his game. I like where he's headed. I really do feel. I do. I feel like he's going to
around here.
Yeah. I feel like he's going to have some big shooting nights. I feel like he's going to be more of a contributor offensively. I think he's going to feel empowered here as well in a way that he probably hasn't been in either Toronto or Sacramento. And I love his fit with his team and defensively, the dog mentality, all of it. You talked about, you wrote about it, him emerging as a clubhouse leader, something that was not expected when they acquired him. And I think that's going to continue to shine. I just don't think that production is going to be peaking over the next 20-something games. And it doesn't have to. Like, he just has to do the little things. He is a role player. That's his responsibility. It's up to guys like Wiggins and Bam and Tyler to carry the bulk of the team and to get the occasional support from a guy like Davion, and I think we'll see that. So I'm holding on what we've seen from his support, which has been great.
Yeah.
And I just think it's going to continue to be that way.
He's one of those hold stocks that you don't look at it every day because it's going to go up and down, right? He's kind of like Lou Dort in that with the 3-point shot specifically, it's when he's feeling it. And he'll take 5, 6, 7 3-pointers in a game. And when he's just, you know what, I don't have it tonight, he'll take 2. And only the really wide open ones when he's kind of forced to do it at the end of the shot clock. That's the way Davion Mitchell approaches his 3-point shot. Do I feel it or do I not? And that's why it's one of those hold stocks where you just, okay, I'm going to tuck that away in the portfolio. I'm not going to look at it. Just it's there. I know that over time it might appreciate a little bit, but the day-to-day is just a little too much of a roller coaster, and I don't need that for my mental health. How much time do we have left here in this segment? Let's do one more really quick. Jaime Jaquez Jr.
Oh, I'm selling.
You think it'll get worse?
I
more
don't
DNP
know.
CDs?
I think that's part of it. I think even with Niko Jovic out, Like, I know that opens up opportunities for him, but I just don't think that I don't think he's ready to fill the role that Miami needs to replace Nico. I think it's going to be Haywood for his defense, and it's
Mhm.
Duncan for his shooting, neither of which that Jaime provides. And while he's going to get the opportunity, you've also got Slow-Mo in the mix. You have to figure out what to do with Terry Rozier. I don't think he's not going to play over the next 20-something games. So you've got other options to go with. I just don't see Jaime being a regular contributor. And so I think forcing him into the rotation the way that we saw over the first half of the season probably isn't going to happen. I think Spo is recognizing now that the playoffs are the goal, and feelings be damned. And if that means you get minutes cut from 15 a game to 10 or less, so be it. And so I think that's what's going to happen, unfortunately, with Hyman.
This to me is a hold or a sell. I mean, I don't know how much I don't know how it gets worse for Jaime unless he's just out of the lineup. Would literally be the only way. Like he plays 5 or 6 or 7 games out of the final 20 games. I mean, that would be a sell. That would be worse than what it is now. It does sound like Kevin Durant will be on the move soon. Did he hint at a potential chance to end his career in Miami recently? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off, let's say you're at our watch party night, you see something you like, you want to place a little wager on it, it's the perfect opportunity. You can do that during the game, whether you bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. You love watching FanDuel's live betting feature. It's so easy to use. It keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether you're backing your team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3. I'm looking at you, Tyler Hero. I never feel like you miss your chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you make your first $5 bet if it wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team is a free daily newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Heat newsletter, one stop for ultimate Heat and league coverage with local analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shear, and Locked On fantasy basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. We haven't gotten to this yet because we had some games that we had to cover, but Kevin Durant went on Draymond Green's podcast this week and said that clarified why he did not, I guess, sign off on a trade to Golden State. Basically said, I didn't want to move midseason. That's not something that I wanted to do. He said that he wanted to finish it out. He had a commitment to Phoenix throughout this season, and just wanted to finish it up and then maybe, it sounds like, rethink things this summer. And he said 2 things that really stood out. Number 1, that he wants to end his career on his terms. And that stands out because I don't think Kevin Durant expected to be shopped before the deadline, and he was. He was shopped. We know that the Miami Heat called, that the Suns and the Heat never got close because they were very far apart in a deal. Apparently the Suns were asking for all of it, and the Heat were like, we're not going to give you all of it. And so they never got on. Minnesota called, Memphis called, all these teams called, and apparently Phoenix listened, according to some of the reports around it. The Warriors obviously were the big player there too. And so that's one part that stood out. And the second part that stood out was the fact that he said, look, he was very conscientious of, if you trade for me, it's a whole new era for your organization. And I love the way he frames that. He's absolutely right. He is absolutely, even at 35, 36 years old. Yeah, you don't think so?
I don't know. It feels a little self-promotional for a superstar,
Sure.
at this stage in their career to have to hype themselves up. I believe that's still the case. I don't believe it as strongly as KD believes it. And I think that's part of what happens when a player goes through the aging process is they still have to hold that internal belief that they are a singular type player that is a game changer. And I don't know that that's as consistent because you look at it. I mean, let's be honest. The Phoenix Suns roster is not a great fit, and they've got some glaring holes, obviously. But I don't think he's dominating to the point where he can carry a team anymore. So you need the right players around him in order to succeed. So yes and no in terms of whether or not he's going to be a franchise-altering player, because he can certainly contribute at a high level. I love KD's game. I like him. I think he would be a great addition to Miami. But I'm not going to pencil him in there and say, "Oh, that's it. That's a ticket to success."
You
Because
couldn't put him on the Wizards and be like playoffs.
No.
So I understand where you're coming from in that regard, but yeah, but I agree with Kevin Durant in the sense of you think about the teams that would actually trade for him, whether it would be like, let's say Memphis traded for him, it would be considered the Kevin Durant era, right? A little bit, because it would be 2 or 3 years of having KD, and then you kind of go back to John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. And I mean, those guys would still be there. I don't know. It would be a championship window era, I suppose, is probably the better way to put it.
I think you're right.
Brian Windhorst went on ESPN after that and sounded pretty sure that Kevin Durant is going to get traded this summer.
With the Suns this summer, Wendy.
Yeah, well, they're going to trade him, and he knows that, and like he's actually given them. There's been a couple of opportunities where he could have criticized them for trying to trade him. He has not done that. He has been very professional about this, and I expect that to continue throughout the rest of the regular season. He's going to try to win every game he's out there. And then in the offseason, he sort of gave himself a little ad there. He's like, whatever team gets me, I'm going to make a difference. I'm still in my prime. So I think he's handled this very appropriately. And look, I know that the Warriors wanted him. It didn't work out. He said, I want to be there. The Warriors are doing great, too. They're doing just fine. KD is setting himself up for his last act. I think everybody's intentions are crystal clear here.
So you don't hear that a lot from even NBA insiders as plugged in as like you never heard Woj do this, where he's like, "Yep, they're going to trade him this summer." Yeah. If Windhorst is coming out and saying that, they're going to trade him this summer. That feels like it's probably a done deal. I think there's a lot of Warriors fans. I'm kind of like on the Warriors internet still a little bit, and Warriors fans like, "Oh, Kevin Durant went on the Draymond Green podcast to open the door to rejoining Golden State." I didn't take it as that. I think what Durant did was he went on the Draymond Green podcast to clean things up. It wasn't that I didn't want to play with Draymond anymore because that rumor had been out there. It was, let's clean this up, let's put a bow on this, and end this conversation for good. But he's not going back to Golden State. I don't think he will. I think Windhorst hit on it right there. Golden State's happy with the Jimmy Butler trade. We'll see what happens with Kuminga and what they do with that. But I think they're pretty much, I think they'll go out and get a big man. That'll be what Golden State does this summer. Mm-hmm. If Kevin Durant wants to end his career on his terms, what better place than Miami, man? You've got Bam. You just won a gold medal with him. You've got Tyler Hero to help space the floor. All-star guy, Hooper. We know how Kevin Durant loves Hoopers. You got Eric Spoelstra, a stable organization. I mean, you think about when you're dating a girl or whatever, you're like, oh yeah, you dated like the clean, straight A student, whatever. Like every guy rebounds to the girl with the tattoos, the one that you met at the bar. Like this is like the opposite for Kevin Durant. He's been in this kind of organization, unstable, had all the control he wanted, picked his spot, everything like that, but has gone through multiple coaches, instability in the ownership level, everything like that. No clear vision. I think what he would be looking for is the opposite. And I think if you look at the opposite of the Phoenix Suns, you have to look at the Miami Heat.
It's a good point. And I also think that Dwyane Wade sets an example of what that's like for opposing teams and opposing other players around the league. And I know that the general consensus, even among Heat fans, is, oh, Miami has shown the rest of the league that they don't treat their superstars well. I don't buy that at all. We talked about that following the Jimmy Butler trade. I don't think that's the perception at all. I think they view players as family, and sometimes things happen in families that don't look great on the surface, but there always is going to be a deep appreciation for Jimmy Butler and what he's brought to the team. And I'm 100% sure that relationship will be fixed at some point. It might take a while, but they fixed much worse relationships. Tim Hardaway left here hating Pat Riley and the Miami Heat front office. Alonzo left here as a free agent, came back and won a championship, and he hasn't left since. Dwyane Wade left in 2016. We'll talk about that in the next segment. And he is family. He is a part of this organization. And I think for KD, that's something he just has never had. He was in Oklahoma City, and that was as close to his family as he's going to get. And he hasn't been able to replicate it since, whether it was the mercenarial approach in Golden State, going to Brooklyn, going anywhere else. It just hasn't worked out for him. For him to recreate the stability that he so desperately craves, Miami is really the only option. If he really wants to go out on his terms, I think the Heat are the best option for him. And I think he recognizes that. And I think players around the league recognize that based on, look, we can look at Jimmy Butler. One of the things that he said in 2019 when he joined the team is he loved the way that this front office and this team treated Dwyane on the way out, something that he desperately wanted. Unfortunately, it didn't work out with him financially, but it's going to work out at some point. His number will be in the rafters at some point. I think he recognized it then. I think other players recognize it now. And I think KD, if he wants that stability that you talked about, then the Heat are the right organization for him.
Yeah, I don't know that he'll ever find that family. I think it might be a little bit late in the game, right? Kevin Durant might be the greatest player ever to not get his jersey retired. I just don't know what maybe the Warriors would do it, but that's the only team I could think of. But he's in Oklahoma City, maybe. I guess so. You're probably right. I guess so. But at this point, he's a mercenary, and that might be his legacy, right? He'll never be of a city the way that Steph is of the Bay Area, or even Devin Booker is of Phoenix, right? You don't associate Kevin Durant with any one city, which is probably the better way that I could have put it. And I don't know that he would, if he comes to Miami and wins a championship, he won't be considered of Miami either. But I don't think that that's his legacy. I don't think that's his story. I think his story is the mercenary. I think his story is one of the greatest scorers we've ever seen by any degree. But when you're a mercenary, you still need that stability to do your job, right? Sure. One more lousy metaphor here, David, if you allow me, is like a mercenary. You get in the car, the getaway car. You need that getaway car's engine to run. Like you need some stability there to be able to pull off the heist, to do the job. I know I'm mixing different illegal activities here, but a little bit. That to me would be if it's been a while since Kevin Durant has succeeded in his mercenary job, so he's Miami provides for a good position to do it.
Miami provides the best getaway driver for this sort of thing. How about that? That's, you've got Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra. You don't get a better lookout than Spo. You don't get a better driver than Pat Riley to be able to pull off one last heist.
Is Tyler Hero the sort of the young kid who doesn't like is on his first job, on his first bank heist job? He's like Matt Damon.
He gets caught right away. He gets caught. I could see him now bleeding on the floor of the bank or whatever. That's
just overconfident, just winning guns.
Don't worry, kid, we got this. Forget about it. Sorry.
I think what's Bam? Bam's like over there. Is he in charge of the doing the codes and breaking into the thing?
No, Bam's the undercover cop that kind of infiltrates the group, and then he develops these great family ties to Spo and Riley, and he has second thoughts about betraying his new crew, etc. I know I'm going deep into weeds here, but I think that's how it works.
I think we have a screenplay on our hands, David.
I think so.
Dwyane Wade opened up about how many finals he thinks the Heat could have gone to if LeBron would have stayed. We talk about that next here on Locked On Heat. Thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The best way to support the show, like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. So Dwyane Wade went on Lou Williams' podcast, as he's been doing many podcasts lately. I'm not sure what he's promoting, but he's doing a lot of pods. Not ours.
Promoting Dwyane Wade.
Promoting Dwyane Wade. Dwyane Wade, we will promote you. You will not find friendlier territory than Locked On Heat. Come on the show. He went on the Williams podcast anyhow and opened up about how the Big Three era would have went if LeBron had stayed, about leaving Miami in 2016. And he talked about it, David, in a way that I have not heard before, despite the rounds of podcasts. So here he is. We'll start with the championships part of this. Here he is talking about how many championships that he could have competed for had LeBron not left in 2014.
If we would have stayed together another 4 years, we would have had a chance to go to the finals 6 of 8 years. Possibly. And so maybe we would not have won each one of those, not 4, not 5, not 6. But Brian went to the finals 10 years in a row. Yeah. Straight up. So he wasn't lying when he started counting off how many times he was going to get there.
Right. It's a great what if that we've talked about a lot. If LeBron doesn't leave in 2014, what does that era look like, an extended version of it? How many more championships could the Heat have won? And I understand where D-Wade's coming from. I think it would have been, it's easy to forget how broken that team was in those 2014 finals against San Antonio. That team needed a major makeover. LeBron left and kept going to finals, but he did it because he had a young Kyrie Irving, a younger Kevin Love, a Cleveland team that had more depth and more youth at that point than Miami did in 2014. But at the same time, the Heat could have reloaded after a year and maybe reached there was an extended window, like Dwyane Wade said, 10 straight years of being in the finals. Even if you took a year or two off of finals contention and took those years to reload, I think the Heat could have gotten back there. My big question is, would the Heat have done it? Because that was not the player development Heat. The Heat developed their player development program in part because LeBron James left, right? They only did it after that. Back then it was sign Ray Allen, sign Mike Miller, sign Rashard Lewis, sign Greg Oden. That was sort of Miami's MO in terms of filling out the back end of the roster. So I don't know that they would have done it then, but I'm not saying that they couldn't have either.
Well, they probably would have let Chris go in free agency, right? Wouldn't that have been the obvious move there? They wouldn't have re-signed him, and they would have just retooled and said, "Okay, LeBron's coming back. Now our focus is on LeBron and Wade for everything that Chris
Would they have
had
let Dwyane
unlocked."
Wade leave anyway in 2016, and then you build around LeBron and Bosh?
I don't think so. I mean, especially they
Probably
had to
not.
let Chris go in 2016 because by that point, the blood clots had already minimized his ability to play. So I mean, that's a whole other string of what if theories there. But
That's true.
I think it would have just involved them probably like LeBron is LeBron. You have to keep him if you can. Dwyane is Dwyane because of everything that he's represented for the organization. So that kind of leaves Chris, unfortunately, as the odd man out. But if you can trade him, let's say in 2015, that kind of restarts or kind of jumpstarts the new era of this big three or whatever you might want to envision it as, the LeBron era in Miami, and then you continue to compete. Because look, you're right. I mean, it's a great point. At 4 years, 4 straight trips to the finals, all the analysis and the constant scrutiny and everything else, that was emotionally draining, and no team can survive that. Like, that's just, every team goes through these phases. Look, I mean, for all the talk about Michael Jordan, et cetera, Michael Jordan retired after they had gone to 3 straight finals. Then he came back and led the team after 2.5 years back to 3 straight finals. It's not just, you can't just say, I'm going to go to the finals. What LeBron has done in being able to carry the team, he does because he's LeBron, but also because he's gone from one team to the next to the next. You cannot do that with just one team. It's impossible.
LeBron is a dynasty. The Heat were not.
Yes.
The Cavs were not. LeBron was the dynasty. It is remarkable that he went to 10 straight finals. I think we're going to look back on that in years from now and be like, I can't believe that happened, especially in Adam Silver's NBA where he's promoting parity above all else.
Yeah. He's your parody buster. That's for sure.
He is, or he certainly was. Here's Dwyane Wade talking about, though, the summer of 2016 when he left.
I told him, I said, hey, I'm opting out next year. And I did. I opted out. And my agent was getting sick around this time. And I actually negotiated. I actually brought the Harrisons into my home. Like, yo, let's talk. We can negotiate this ourselves. This is what I want. So I wanted 3-year deal to take me out. I wanted a certain amount of money. And they wouldn't do it. They wanted to be big players in free agency, and they wanted to go out to Kevin Durant. And we had Hassan Whiteside, who was a player that came out of the G League, who had a great year, but he was up for $100 million. And I'm sitting here like, I want young fella to get his money, but y'all about to give him money over me?
Right. Yeah.
Like, take care of me first, then let's take care of young fella.
Really interesting. Again, opening up in a way that I had not heard Dwyane open up about that time. And before that, he was talking about how Chris Bosh got that extension. Remember when LeBron left, Bosh got the big max extension, and Dwyane Wade was waiting by the phone wondering where his extension was, and it never came. And then that's why he says, and then the next year I was going to opt out, and I let them know. And then, of course, we end up at 2016. What did you think about that? And the fact that Dwyane was, it sounded a little bit bitter that they went ahead and paid Hassan Whiteside before they paid him.
Absolutely. A little surprising. But, you know, it's just, players say it and it's become sort of cliche. We all understand it. We kind of all repeat it ad nauseum as well. You know, the business of basketball. But, you know, these players, there's such an emotional attachment to how they're perceived. Like, we just talked about this with Kevin Durant. Like, I mean, the idea of a family and wanting to be taken care of. And Dwyane was obviously feeling very angry in 2016 about this. I think some of it has healed, or he wouldn't speak about the organization the way he does. He wouldn't talk about the statue. He wouldn't be a part of this organization the way that he is. But clearly, some of it hasn't. Like, and that is what's most surprising is how deep some of that bitterness is. I really think it was also the right move, and I hate saying that because the Hassan era didn't end well, and you could probably look at it as a glaring overpay. At the time, it wasn't. I mean, there were the Portland Trailblazers, there was the Dallas Mavericks in particular. Mark Cuban was going to throw that $100 million at Hassan Whiteside if the Arisons had it, if the Heat had it. So he was going to get that money somewhere. And that he was viewed as the center that Dallas needed to kind of help usher the next era of Dallas basketball, et cetera. I don't think Dwyane performed at a high level following his departure from Miami. Like it sucks. And I don't know how to kind of take it because we're stuck here in the terms of the human element is so important to remember that you want to be able to take care of these players. And we just went through this with Jimmy Butler. Was it the right move to pay an aging player that wasn't going to perform at a high level and pay him $60 million plus a year just based on good memories and good feelings? We rarely, if ever, see that. Like, that's only happened.
We rarely see it work out.
We never see it work out. It's only happened twice. Dirk Nowitzki and Kobe Bryant, two players that were getting paid for what they accomplished rather than what they would. And in Dirk's case, he took significantly less money. In Kobe's case, they wound up being a really bad lottery team, drafting Lonzo Ball, Julius Randle.
It ruined 10 years. It ruined 10 years of Lakers basketball. We saw it with Tim Duncan too, but he took a dramatic pay cut as well, just like Dirk did.
That's the difference maker. That's the difference. If Dwayne's mentions in this clip, I wanted a certain amount of money, and you and I were talking about this. What's that amount of money?
It's a lot. I would guess it was a lot.
Probably too much for an aging Dwyane Wade.
It is an incredible stat that Dwyane Wade was never the highest paid player on the Heat. Not once in his career.
Strange.
That is a wild stat. But at the same time, he took a pay cut to assemble the big three. And he willingly did it. And he deserves credit for that. In an era where a lot of players were not doing that at their primes, right? We talk about Dirk and Tim Duncan doing it. They were not doing it at their primes. Dwyane gets a lot of credit for that. But you can't get credit for that and then at the same time wave this flag about how I've never been the highest paid player on my own team, right? And we're giving you credit because you put winning above the money there. I will say this.
Should they have changed that? Should they have changed it then? I mean, since he wasn't the highest paid player?
No, I think what you brought up was a really interesting question. Should they have paid him instead of Hassan Whiteside? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. Here's what I will say. The end of Dwyane Wade's career would not have looked the same had he been making $30 million, $20 million a year, whatever the max was at that point. We wouldn't have judged Dwyane Wade coming off the bench for essentially the veteran minimum the same way. And I think Dwyane leaving in 2016 and coming back and embracing a six-man role, making very little money compared to what he had been making prior, was maybe the best thing that could have happened to him at that stage of his career in terms of his Heat legacy. Because we have seen how Heat fans treat players who they think are overpaid. Terry Rozier is in the doghouse. Tyler Johnson was in the doghouse. Hassan Whiteside, after he resigned and a year later and not playing well, in the doghouse. Heat fans do not put up with overpaid players, and few fan bases do. What would it have looked like if Dwyane Wade was on the Kobe contract and was broken down and looked the way that he did? We wouldn't be remembering that a magical shot to beat the Warriors at Kaseya Center and him jumping up on the stanchion and breaking his knee or whatever. We wouldn't remember that so fondly if he was getting paid $30 million to do that at that stage of his career.
Did Lakers fans turn on Kobe towards the end?
I think they turned. I don't know, because he tore his Achilles, so it was a little bit different. But I think they turned on the organization, and I think they hated that Kobe was on that albatross contract. Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
And it certainly, like, people don't remember. It soured feelings. Like, those last couple Kobe years that was rough basketball to watch. I mean, that was D'Angelo Russell as a rookie. I mean, that was rough basketball to watch. And I think it would have been the same in Miami, right? Like, it would have been really rough. And who knows how far that sets the organization back. You know, do you ever get Jimmy Butler? Do you ever, like, does any of that stuff happen?
No.
Right? You don't. So I think it was the best thing that could have happened for Dwyane and for the Heat. And so I don't know if it was necessarily the right thing to pay Whiteside over him in 2016, but I think it all ended up working out the way it needed to work out. Easy for me to say when it's not my money, but Dwyane got that money in Chicago, so let's not worry about it that much. That'll do it for us. That'll do it for us today. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. See you at the Toros in Coconut Grove.
See you tonight.